It's always like, what do you do during that time when the music's playing? Just maybe I should splice in like the logo or something at the beginning, so it's not just us.
Or just dance.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
It's a catchy tune.
That has been mentioned. People seem to like it, so every time I let my brother know because it makes him feel good.
Oh, good.
Yep. All right. It is Real Estate for Real with Eric Pettigo. I, of course, Eric Pettigo, being joined today by my friend Gina Wolter. Gina, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You were one of the rare people. I could just end the sentence there. But
okay.
No, you were one of the rare people who actually reached out to me.
Yeah.
And said you'd like to come on.
Yeah.
Which I greatly appreciate. And anybody out there, please do it, because I can tell you the recruiting trail to get people to come on this podcast is tougher than you think.
You need to find some only children out there because they love stuff like this.
That's funny that you say that, because while I was setting up, we were sitting here talking, and I said, "You excited?" And what did you say?
Yeah.
You said, "I'm an only child."
I'm an only child, of course.
I love the spotlight. Perfect. You are the perfect guest then. I was a middle child.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah.
I was always fighting for attention.
Sure.
So I think only kids and middle kids are kind of the same in that sense.
Maybe.
Love attention.
Yeah.
I just didn't get as much of it as I wanted. So now this is what I do.
Yeah. This is what happens when you get all of it. So.
Yes. Yes. So Gina, let's get into your origin story. You've been doing this how long?
I got my license April 30th, 2013. So just at 12 years.
Okay. So, wow. I thought you were because I got my license at the very end of 2013 and then started at the beginning of 2014. So I'm just learning that you and I have been doing this for
about the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And so then what was before this?
Banking.
For you?
For the most part, banking. I did a short stint at the Department of Revenue. And that was the
That sounds exciting. Let's spend 15 minutes on that.
That was awful. That's why I'm now on blood pressure medicine.
Oh my gosh.
Seriously. That was terrible. And that was the catalyst that forced me to make a decision. Brenda Taylor, who my mom had worked with for years when I was growing up, had been bugging me to get my license for several years. And that experience at Revenue was enough to push me over the edge.
Oh my gosh.
To make that decision.
So Department of Revenue.
Yeah, it was awful.
Banking. What else has there been?
Banking. Well, while working in banking, my first job was in mortgage banking. Working in the secondary market.
Okay.
Purchasing post-closing loans for First Bank Mortgage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In 1986. And I actually had a book that had the P&I factors. And we would buy these loans, and they had been closed for 2 or 3 months. So we had to go through and actually on a calculator amortize the loans. So our funding department knew how much to pay for the loans.
Wow.
So I was using the Fannie Mae Gold book to get the actual 10.5% 30-year term, go over to the factor, multiply it, amortize it by hand.
Cutting edge technology.
Yeah, I'm that old. I'm that old.
Stop it.
But I understand how amortization works. So.
Yeah, I would hope.
Yeah. So then I did that for a few years while my ex was in dental school. We ended up buying a dental practice in Alton, and so I kind of helped manage the dental practice and worked in banking down there as well at the same time.
Okay. And then, so real estate itself came about how? What was the, you weren't happy and doing the revenue, but you wanted to move on to something else. Why was that something else real estate?
Well, my mom had been in real estate when I was a kid growing up.
I know. This is what I wanted you to get into a little bit.
I know
So,
you did.
Yeah.
So when I was in 7th grade, 1977, my mom was working for County Town Realty
County Town Realty.
in Petersburg. It was on the west side of the square. Denny Willis, who still lives in Petersburg, he does mostly farmland now.
Okay.
Denny and another gentleman by the name of Roger Horn. And they were a couple of characters. And after school, the buses would drop us off near downtown, and my friends and I would all go down to Blanche's newsstand for a soda and a bag of chips and stop by and harass my mom a little bit on our way. And then in the early 80s, interest rates were crazy high.
Like crazy high.
Like 18, 19%.
Like people today don't realize that.
No, these aren't high rates.
Right.
Of course, houses were $86,000 for a lake house too. It's just, so
everything's
relative.
Yeah, everything's relative. The rates are much lower than historically they were, but prices are way higher.
But income's way higher too. So
there you go.
Yeah. But so Denny and Roger decided to close County Town Realty, and they went their separate ways. And Ernie Land came to town.
All right.
And Ernie owned Springfield Real Estate. And
in Petersburg.
In Springfield.
In Springfield.
But he opened a satellite office in
Petersburg.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
He had a big 2-story house across from where the Dairy Queen is. And
same Dairy Queen that's there now?
Same Dairy Queen.
Really?
Yeah.
I have many a time my trip to Petersburg, if because from here and where I live specifically, Petersburg is like a 45 to 50 minute drive. So if I have somebody who wants to see a house in Petersburg, which happens sometimes, and I'll do it because I love going to Petersburg. Something about that place I just love. But I'll go, and if I'm like, oh, look at me 15 minutes early, guess I'm gonna have to have a blizzard while I wait.
Yeah,
so
that's too bad.
Yeah, shoot.
Well, it wasn't the Brazier Burger. It wasn't. You couldn't go inside when I was a kid.
Okay.
You walked up to 2 picnic tables and a little sliding screen, and they would hand you your ice cream, and it was only open during the summer months.
Oh, wow.
But when I was in high school, then they came in and they built the Brazier Burger, and they remodeled it and everything.
Made it what it is now. All right.
So their office was across the street. That's now Nichols parking lot for Nichols car dealership.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And then I don't remember how long Ernie had it, but Brenda Taylor was the managing broker. And her son and I were in school together from 4th grade all the way through high school. And then John B. bought it.
Really?
Yes. So my mom and Brenda worked for John B. Clark and in the Petersburg office. So it was really cool.
So about what year was ish? What did John B. buy that?
Early 80s.
Okay.
Because I would go down after school and I would type the contracts for them. It was 1 page. There were no buyer's agents, no disclosures, no inspections. You might have Uncle Joe go look at the roof.
Uncle Joe, by the way, if you look in the yellow pages, Uncle Joe's roofing is still up and going.
I remember when we got the fax machine out there. It was really cool.
I bet.
But
yeah. Like space age stuff.
Yeah. We thought we were hot stuff.
It's funny because I don't know if you mess around on TikTok at all.
I don't.
Okay, and I do, and probably more than I should, but I don't put my listings and stuff up there. I just talk about like real estate stuff. And I tend to be a magnet for these trolls online who really have an axe to grind against realtors. And somebody the other day said, when explaining to me why we're not needed as a profession anymore, that real estate contracts have been largely the same for the last 30 years anyway, he said. Right. And it's, tell me you don't know what you're talking about without saying you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting because they were 1 page. And now some of our contracts are north of 20 pages,
Well, by the time you add the inspection
everything.
Addendums and disclosures and that all becomes part of the contract. We never had that. When Mom was,
and so it's, and that's the whole point. I try to do my best to educate the general public as to what it is that we do.
Yeah.
And that's my whole goal.
We're educators.
Right. And just, hey, this is what goes into this. This is what the job's really like. It's not what you see on TV.
Yeah.
It's this. I mean, it's, watching people go sell multi-million-dollar beachfront property. That's fun, but camera crews aren't exactly hopping in the Camry
that's entertainment
to watch me show a $60,000 foreclosure that you're scared to walk on some of the floors.
Getting bit by fleas.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, because that's the reality.
Right.
A lot of our days. So, but you went and typed up these one-page contracts for them.
Yeah.
Wow.
They didn't have lock boxes.
So what happened?
You had to go to the office. You had to call Springfield Real Estate or Century 21 or whomever and say, hey, I'm going to be there to show this house. I need to stop by and pick up a key.
Go get a key from the office.
Go get a key from the office. Go out, show it. Can you imagine that in this market?
I mean, no, not for every showing. I mean, sometimes you still do, depending on certain properties.
Yeah.
Sometimes you still do. Yeah. But for every showing.
And then you you drive in from Petersburg, like my mom, and you get there and the other agent hadn't returned the key yet, and you've got, showings lined up and
just the coordinating part.
Yeah.
And now we think we have it tough when we hop on the app and we have to, 45 minutes here, 30 minutes here, and I'm like, that's nothing.
No. But they didn't have all that to have to deal with either. People couldn't track you down.
Sure.
And hound you. You went out to dinner, you went home, and you listened to your answering machine.
Yeah. Yeah, back then you weren't like right now, we're pretty much on call 24/7.
We're accessible. We're.
And I don't know that people fully understand that.
They don't.
And so I remember one day specifically, the first text I got was at about 3:30 in the morning. And the last one I got was at midnight. And it was all throughout the day. It was a busy day all through, but that's to wrap your head around that. Like, it didn't used to be like that. We didn't have cell phones. So at 5 o'clock, like anybody else, realtor would clock out and probably go home if they didn't have some showings scheduled.
But I will say I do remember, and I don't know if it's just because we were in such a small town, I remember people coming to our house, knocking on the door, especially farmers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Would come and knock on the door at, 6 o'clock in the morning. My dad's having coffee, and he's like, hey.
Yeah. Well, you said it, though, like small town. And back then, I imagine Petersburg is still very much a small town where everybody knows everybody. But back then, I'm sure everybody really knew everybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, my dad printed the Observer. He was a printer.
Really?
So everybody knew my dad. Yeah. Yeah. Funny story. One time Mom got in trouble because Dad thought it would be really funny to kind of redo their ad and make Mom's name bigger than John B. Clark's.
Oh.
And that didn't go over too well.
That's funny.
Yeah. He thought he was just being funny. And no, John B. didn't think so. So.
All right. And so you obviously, okay, so your family history is real estate.
Yeah.
And so for you, then it was when it was time to, was it like a reluctancy? Like, I'm not going to do this because this is what my family did?
I should have known better. Yeah, because I had seen it.
It would suck you in eventually.
Yeah. But I knew, how intrusive the business could be in your personal life and your holidays. And I had seen my mom go through all that. And I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? So I waited, my kids were older, of course, and before I finally did it. But, I always say I was 50 before I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. So,
I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. But
it's addictive. Why do you think realtors never retire? I mean,
they never do.
No, it's something about the rush you get when you get that deal put together and you're,
It's funny because we were working with like a money guy and we're to invest some stuff. And he's like, so when you're ready to retire, and I go,
yeah,
I'm a realtor, man. Oh, retire? Like at some point, maybe I'll slow down and take more vacations.
And you can be more selective who you work with.
Right. But retire? We don't do that.
No.
And, for me, and you're right, it's addictive. And I remember when I first got into the business, Mike Busher telling me, basically be careful because this can take over everything. You still have, because at the time I had young kids, So he's like, get that, make sure you have that balance, because you can, when you dive into this, you can have tunnel vision. This can be all you see.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had to be over the years a few times reminded by my wife.
Right.
Hey, there are other things.
I hope you didn't respond to that 3:30 a.m. text, because you got to train these people.
Yeah.
You wait till 8:01 and respond.
Yeah. And and still, even in this was a couple years ago, and that specific client is, he's an up all night, sleep during the day kind, so for him, 3 a.m. But that's what I have to explain to people sometimes is, and I love the considerate clients that we get who say, I want to go look at houses, but I work all day. I'm not going to, I wouldn't ask you to show me a house at like nighttime or the weekend. And listen, you're very sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. But just so you know, this is what I signed up for.
Right. It comes with the territory.
Yeah.
We all know that.
We have to work around your schedule. If you're only available, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. during the week, and you're only available up until noon on the weekends, then we're going to work with you with that. We'll clock in and we'll go. That's the business we signed up for.
Because that trade-off is, if we have something going on during the day, we have the flexibility to say, okay, I've got this time blocked off to go do this with my family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I've got an hour and a half to record a podcast.
Right.
So I can schedule my appointments around that.
Yep.
Yeah. And it is. That's a nice freedom. And I think that's the part that people mistake when they say you get to make your own schedule. I think that they think that means you only have to work when you want, which are two very different things. Yes, I'm able to schedule my work how I want, but I don't get to not work.
Right.
And also, it's fine. It's what we signed up for.
Right.
So, sorry, I'm taking us down. But your, so 2013, you break down. You give in. You cave. You're going to go ahead and get your real estate license. So that process for you was, did you pass the test first time?
Yep.
Same. We're in the first timers club.
Yeah. I walked out of revenue, turned in my badge on March 11th, started studying, took my boards on April 30th.
That did not take you long.
I was motivated.
Yes.
Yeah, I had to make some money.
That did not take you long at all.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then, you jumped in 2013, and where did you start? Was it here?
Here, with Brenda Taylor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because you were here when I got here, so you must have, all right. So you're a lifer here just like me.
Yeah, with Brenda. Yeah, I started with Brenda and then moved around a little bit, but...
How was that? How was the first year or the first, couple of years for you? How did that go?
Well, Brenda was a little more old school. And so I think I brought a little bit of a younger vibe to her. But Brenda was probably the best person for me at that time.
Okay.
Brenda was incredibly intelligent. She was by the book. She was savvy. She was shrewd. She was just a smart lady and an amazing businesswoman. And I think I learned a lot. It was a great foundation.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So how long, and this is what I always tell like newer agents when I talk to them, because that first year can be tough, right? There's a lot of spinning your wheels, a lot of just trying to chase down anything you can. Like I remember, I had a lady who could only, do contract for deed.
Oh, boy.
And that was it, right? But I spent a lot of time, and I'm driving around in snow and just, trying to find, and never did. Again, never got anything together, but I spent a lot of time working on that. I had somebody else who was just looking for a place to rent. And so I would go driving around town looking for rent signs and call the number on it, trying to do anything that I could. And it took, a half a year before I finally closed on something. It took 3 or 4 months before I got a listing. So And there were so many times during that first year where I was second guessing, can I do this? I mean, I know I can't. I know if it keeps going like this, I obviously can't do this.
Right.
You know, I need this to be able to make a living and support my family. And at this rate, that's not looking good. So for that first year, for the first half a year at least, I was unsure if I made the right decision. Did you have any time like that, or were you able to generate stuff a little bit quicker?
Well, I was in a different situation. I had been divorced since 2006, so I was still getting pretty good child support.
Good. Okay.
So I had that cushion, and I was living in Petersburg at the time, and so because of all my family and connections out there, I did pretty well. And as you know, when you get your license, you don't know anything about our forms.
Nothing.
You don't know anything about negotiating. You know, there's so much you have to learn. And that's why I think I was so blessed to have Brenda there to, show me the ropes and train me on the forms and, how to negotiate and all of that.
Yeah. And I can remember when I started here, I remember seeing you. And I'm sure you came to some of those same trainings.
I did the Buffini thing.
Same. I did all that stuff. And I don't know why. I just assumed you'd been in the business. You carried yourself like somebody who knew what you were doing.
Well, I think the banking background really helped me a lot.
Sure.
And just, I lived with real estate with my mom being in it all those years. So
it was a very comfortable transition for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not the same for me. I was terrified.
Well, I was older too.
Yeah. Well,
as an old soul.
Yeah. Well, but either way, it was kind of, and somebody else, I remember somebody else online saying, well, you barely have to do anything to get licensed. Just take a couple courses or something, and the realtors they just don't know what they're doing because it doesn't take much to become. And I push back a little bit and say, it doesn't matter if it's a 5-day course or a 5-year course. You're not going to know what you're doing until you get out there and do it.
Well, and even after 12 years, still every situation's different.
Yeah.
I mean, you still get different scenarios thrown at you. And I think, and talking about the forms, back to the forms, I'm on the forms committee. They're constantly changing as a result of these issues that we run into and changing markets and all of that. I mean, our forms are constantly evolving and changing.
There are like an infinite combination of scenarios that can happen with any given transaction that even in the, 100+ year history of our industry, that things are still popping up that we have to go, oh, well, now we need to put something in our contract to protect both sides in this instance, just in case this happens again.
Right.
And I think, and then that's up to us. I mean, for one, that's up to the people. So you're on the forums committee now. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But it's up to people like you who get onto those committees to make sure our forms, fit what we're doing. And then it's the rest of us have to stay up on these changes and make sure we understand what we're having people sign and commit to. And that can be a lot.
Yeah. And that's why I think our two mics, do such a great job of keeping us updated on those changes. Because, I mean, Mike O pointed out a change to me the other day that somebody in an estate deal had an attorney review it, and he pointed this out. Hey, did you know this? And Mike was like, oh my gosh,
Really?
Yeah. So there's another tweak that we have to make. So,
and sometimes it just takes a certain set of eyes to look at something and say, actually,
or look at it in a different scenario.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, we're coming at it from different perspectives,
and because it's so hard to explain, because it's not just a uniform, one way to get everything done. Like the paperwork can't be like that either. It's so hard to have it be kind of all encompassing to every possible scenario because you just never know. And then you start adding in all the variables of people's emotions and personalities and and it's Like, it's a lot.
We deal with people who are emotionally charged most of the time. Somebody's died, there's a divorce, first time home buyer who's scared, and
Yeah.
there's a variety of things that can happen.
So everybody I've ever talked to in this business agrees that during the course, in order to get your license, you rarely learn anything about what it is to be an actual realtor. Mm-hmm. Do you think that something should be incorporated to that kind of goes over and discusses managing people's expectations and personalities and possible things you're going to run into? Because it's such a big part of what we do, and it's so unexpected when you're learning about boundary lines and amortization rates while you're studying to get your license and all these things that you should know about, and laws and stuff like that. But then it's such a people business, like that's not even mentioned when you're studying to get licensed.
Right. I don't know.
It's crazy, right?
I don't know that I don't know there's time for that.
Right. I know.
I think it is kind of a sink or swim, survival of the fittest business.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we've got good managing brokers that can hold the newbies' hands, and we've got people here who are willing to help,
sure.
which is great. I mean, you could walk around this building and find somebody that's probably dealt with this scenario.
Yeah, go knock on any door, and I guarantee you.
And they'll help.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, absolutely. And another reason I like doing this.
Yeah.
Because we share stories, we share experiences. Other agents can listen to it and hopefully take something away. Like I've said before, I think this is episode 28, maybe 20. I don't know. I've learned something on every single episode. And so for me personally, as much, as I like just doing this and putting it out there, like for me personally, my growth as an agent has like jumped up substantially since I've started doing this.
Yeah.
And communicating with all these other agents and sharing ideas and how people attack certain things it's been very enlightening, and it's something I didn't even know I was going to do. Right.
And there's as there are some agents that have different niches. Like, some do more commercial, or some do more rural, or, you get out in Petersburg, you're going to run into wells and propane and septics, and, those are very, very different, and they can be big ticket expenses. So you've got to protect your client. And, if you don't know, just say, I don't know, but I will find out. Don't ever, don't ever act like you know something if you don't.
Yeah, no, and that's something I think we all need to work on a little bit too. It's so easy to just start trying to talk and act like you're an expert on, and sometimes it's okay if you don't know everything. It's okay to go back and
stay in your lane.
When I had I think it was Connor Sweeney on here. The name of that episode is something like it's okay to say you don't know, or something, because that was a big theme of what we were talking about. Like it's all right. Yep. It's okay if you don't know everything. Okay, so we've talked about Petersburg a lot, and that's your stomping grounds, right?
Yeah.
And I love Petersburg. For one, I love Hand of Fate. It's the best beer on the planet, and I will stand by that, because I have been to many places around the planet and drank their beer. Nothing's as good as Hand of Fate.
I think Nature would agree with you. I think she likes their Cool Bean Dream.
Double Bean Dream. Yeah, their coffee beer is excellent. But I don't like IPAs at all. I should have brought
one. I didn't even think about it.
Well, I've got some appointments after this. Okay. But yeah. That's why I don't record this at night. Do it during the day, because when I had the Grady's in here, a bottle of wine.
I know. Yeah. They brought the green wine.
Yeah. But anyhow, I
bet that shocked you. I bet you never
expected I was that. Completely, I was blown away. I had no idea that would have happened. But I don't like IPAs at all, but for some reason they're good. I'd never, anyhow, they're just, if you're listening, anybody from Hand of Fate, you do a great job. So that's one of the things I like about Petersburg, but also to me, it's like very scenic. I like the hills. I like the older buildings. I love the square. Lake Petersburg is a cool place. So for you've been there, and you said when you got going, like you were tied into that community.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a, not easy, but easier transition into real estate, because that's what this whole thing is, building a business.
Right.
You have to rely on your community, your sphere of influence and stuff like that. And so that was helpful for you, but you also have a very vested interest in New Salem.
Yes. And that's primarily why I reached out to you, to try to promote my initiative at New Salem.
And I'm sorry it took 30 minutes and 25 seconds to get to that, Gina, but we have to talk about real estate a little bit
That's
too.
okay.
That's the
That's
name of the
okay.
show.
That's okay.
But anybody who has grown up, because I'm a Chatham kid. I grew up in Chatham. I've been my whole life. But multiple field trips to New Salem as a child. And everybody who's grown up around here can say the same thing.
Yeah. If you grew up in Illinois.
And as a kid, I don't think you understand kind of how lucky we are to have something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's such a neat place to go see and learn and experience. And as a kid, it's fun. But, you get to go into the gift shop and get candy, so it's like that's the super fun part, But I have my whole life continued to go back there. When my kids did field trips, I made sure that I signed up to chaperone those field trips so I could go back.
Yeah.
My parents go camping out there it's their favorite place to camp, and we go hang out with them while they camp. We go do the candlelight walk every year.
Candlelight tour. Yes. I think they're going to try to have that more than just one weekend this year.
Good. I mean, there are so many people who show up for that. And if you don't know what that is, it's in October every year,
It's
right?
always the first weekend of October. Yeah. Don't bring a halogen flashlight with you.
Oh,
please.
no, don't be a jerk.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
Don't, yeah.
No.
Don't shine it in people's eyes. Yeah.
There's no need. Okay. There are 8 million candles lighting up
Along the walkways.
the walkways. And those are all real.
Oh, yeah. We bought the Lincoln League purchases those for the candlelight tour.
So do you know the exact number of how many there are, or roughly?
I wrote the check for them last year, and I don't remember, but there are a lot.
Well, I'm not going to ask you how much you wrote the check for, but and it's those things as an adult where you look around and you go, well, that's a lot of candles.
It's a lot of candles.
That's
and a lot of volunteers.
Whole lot of candles.
Those
Yes.
people are all volunteers.
I know. My niece volunteers out there.
Yes.
Loves it.
Yes, it's neat. My daughter she went to Illinois College, and she did a summer internship out there. The Lincoln League pays half of the payroll for the IC Explorers intern program out there, and IC pays the other half. And they help the interpreters, and they work in the village during the summer.
So tell me about when your involvement with that started and
With New Salem?
Yes. I mean, I'm sure you've been going there your whole life.
Oh, I've been going to New Salem my whole life. My grandparents built Parkview Restaurant and Smorgasbord when I was 3. So New Salem was literally in the backyard
Yes.
of the restaurant and motel where they lived in a house there. And we had, the Country Opry used to be really big. I mean, and they'd be parked up and down the highway on both sides of the highway on a Friday and Saturday night. And so we would always go on the trails, mushroom hunting. There's a little cemetery up there. I have family buried in that, the Bale family cemetery. But my grandmother, who ran Parkview, was a Ferguson. That was her maiden name.
Okay.
And so she has family that lived and worked and are buried at New Salem. And so a couple of years ago, things weren't going real well out there. There were a lot of issues. Some were personnel issues. And one of the employees approached me and said, would you be willing to join the New Salem Lincoln League? I think you could really help them a lot. And I was like, I don't live in Petersburg anymore. I don't want to drive out there for a meeting every month.
Sure.
It's always at night and whatever. But she cautioned me. She said, now I will tell you, don't go in there guns a-blazing. Oops. I kind of went in guns a-blazing.
I was like, did she know you?
Not very well, evidently. So I joined the Lincoln League probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe. And then a year ago in June, they elected me president.
Wow.
And I said, buckle up, because there's stuff that needs to be done. This place is going to fall to the ground if somebody doesn't do something. And honestly, I just got tired of hearing people in the community saying, when are they going to do something about that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are they?
Yeah, who do you think they is?
That's us.
Yeah.
You know, our senators don't know what's going on out here if somebody doesn't tell them.
Sure.
And, you know, I think I told you earlier, I started doing a lot of legislative advocacy work about 24 years ago. My daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. And I became the state leader for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And I realized just because somebody's an elected official doesn't mean they're an expert on every topic.
What?
So
You don't say.
you're the expert. Go in there, testify, tell them how it is, and educate them.
Sure.
Because Senator McClure has been awesome, but he didn't know what a carding mill was. He didn't know what a grist mill was. He didn't know the history at New Salem. And so he didn't know, you know, about the restoration being part of the New Deal program, the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, which employed young men right after the Depression. So that's the whole reason it became a state park, and it was reconstructed, was to provide work for people.
Okay.
So when we saw, you know, we started seeing what was going on out there. Dave, my fiance, who's a semi-retired lobbyist, we got in touch with Senator McClure, and we showed him the photos, and he was upset.
I'm sure.
And he took them to the director of DNR, because the Illinois Department of Natural Resources oversees all of our state historic sites. A lot of people don't realize the state of Illinois owns 700 acres out there.
Really? Mm-hmm. See, I didn't know that until literally just now.
Mm-hmm. They own across the street. There's an old restaurant that they built in the 80s that is falling down. Mm-hmm. Windows are boarded up. The thing's full of mold. I drove Senator McClure and Representative Rosenthal by that when we went out there one day, and they're like, "Who owns this?"
Yeah,
you do. So it was quite an eye-opening experience for them.
I would imagine. And like, I guess to be fair to them, there's a lot on their plate, right? And so
their districts are huge.
Like you said, until somebody brings these things to their attention,
absolutely,
they don't know. It's not that they're just knowingly neglecting.
No.
And knowingly.
They had no idea.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure and I don't know how all this stuff works, there's an allotted amount that goes to each of these things. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. No? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit.
Know. There's 56 state historic sites in Illinois. A couple of weeks ago, we met with the powers that be at DNR, mm-hmm. including a couple of their legal counsel. We've got their attention finally.
Good.
And they are $1 billion in deferred maintenance.
Oof.
So that comes from just continually kicking the can down the road. And over time, you know, that deferred maintenance becomes deterioration.
Yes.
And then it's going to cost you 10 times as much to make the repairs. And that's where we're at.
And what could have prevented this? Right? Like, at some point down the road, or I guess at some point in the past, had somebody stepped up and said, hey, if we don't do something now, we were going to get to this point down the road and it's going to cost more. But that didn't happen.
That did not happen.
And so now we are where we are. Mm-hmm. And like, in a way I can relate in the subdivision that I live in. I was on the board I was a president for a while. I was on the board for a long time, but we have a lake in the middle of our subdivision. Mm-hmm. And our subdivision is like 40 or 50 years old. And over time, you know, sediment builds up, mm-hmm. and it needs dredged. It's a big issue now, but because no steps were taken in the decades leading up, mm-hmm. now we are looking at something that is like, oh, this is a major expense now that we're trying to figure out how to tackle. It's like anything.
It's just like your house.
Right?
You can't just sit there and not touch your house for 40 years.
No.
You know.
And so that's what's happened on a much larger scale to one of the coolest, you know, most kind of like iconic places in Illinois to go see and experience everybody just kind of takes it for granted because you go there. It's not like you have to pay admission to get in.
No.
So you go there, you walk around, you look at the stuff, and, you read the things, and it's cool, and then you go home, and that's it. But nobody has really considered what it takes to actually keep this place in the condition it needs to be in for us all to continue to enjoy it.
Right.
And so now you have gotten some people's attention.
Yes.
And so how are we looking?
Well, so what I kind of did, I had some openings on the board for the new Salem Lincoln League. So I was very strategic in who we invited onto the board. I've got some young people that are very tech savvy. I've got a graphic artist. I have a retired attorney from Texas who worked for Firestone and several big, big companies.
Look at you.
Yeah. And so I have a lady who has a 19th century master's degree in 19th century history. So my board is stacked.
Gina, where did you find these people?
Petersburg.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
they have a vested interest too because they're there.
They're from there,
Yeah.
and they're familiar with it. And so I was able to harness all these people's skill sets and knowledge, and we were a force. And so then...
Yeah, I'm a little scared right now. You're not even coming after me.
Building my team, of course, I had Dave, a 40-year seasoned lobbyist who's still registered to lobby. And then the icing on the cake was the PR expert, Ryan Keith, who works at the Capitol. And he had the connections for all of the Associated Press, Chicago Tribune,
wow,
St. Louis Post, Illinois Times, State Journal Register. And so we met them out there one day, and we pulled up on a Monday, and there were probably 20 reporters and cameramen. And we spent about 3 hours there with Senator McClure and Representative Rosenthal. And we did a press conference there.
Wow.
And once it hit that AP,
it went.
It was in Toronto. People were calling me from New Jersey. What are you doing? You're on the wire here. What's going on? Yeah. So that was huge.
That is awesome.
That got the governor's attention.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the testimony, at first, we had 3 bills that we introduced. One was an appropriation bill for $5 million. We had no idea how much.
Okay.
We just threw it out there to flush out some answers. We had a bill that would create a preservation commission that would provide oversight. So this doesn't happen every 40 years.
Right.
We can't bank on public outrage saving the place every 40 years.
No, there has to be general upkeep along the way.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes. And the third one was to exempt the village from procurement codes, because the procurement codes are very burdensome for a historical village, because they dictate you have to get 3 bids, you have to pay prevailing wage. You're looking at properties that you can't use a circular saw, you can't use an air nailer, you can't use plywood, you can't use caulking. And there's very few people who have a sawmill who has a vertical saw that can cut these shingles.
Like it has to be done.
You can't go to Lowe's.
A certain way.
Because it's all under historic preservation.
Yes.
So it all has guidelines and restrictions on how it has to be done. Then you have the unions you have to deal with. So you've got people who might have the skill set to go out there and do something, but the paperwork to get anything done is ridiculous.
I'm sure.
So Senator McClure actually testified on a procurement committee here a few weeks ago, and he pointed out the construction on the Capitol right now, they exempted the Capitol from procurement codes for this very reason, because of all the ornate features and the specialties that they needed. They can't just have anybody just come in there.
Sure.
And do that. So the testimony I gave for the Senate hearing was in regard to the Preservation Commission, which DNR did not want. So DNR tried to kill our bill. But Dave had already been to the Capitol and had shown my 3-ring binder of photos to Senator Joyce, who was the chair of the committee that we were going to testify in. And that day was crazy because it was, you're going to testify, you're not going to testify, you're going to testify, you're not going to testify. We're on our way down to the Capitol. It's a 2:30 hearing. Senator McClure calls. He's like, do you want to testify? I'm like, yes. I've been working on this for a week.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a lot to say. And I got to testify.
And how did that go?
It passed out of committee unanimously.
Wow, look at you.
So Senator Turner was very supportive. You know, she's like, that's not my district, but I have a lot of Lincoln sites in my district. This is there's an educational element here too, other than just preserving history. And so, of course, they then announced that they would give us $8 million to just shut up and go away.
Well, how far is that? How far will that go?
You know, I'm hoping it will go farther than what they thought. When we first sat down with DNR, they said their estimates were $19 million.
Okay.
But they're taking into consideration theater in the park, the campgrounds, what needs done everywhere. My focus as president of the new Salem Lincoln League is the historical village.
Yes.
So we're hopeful the procurement in the budget, they can carve out just the village, just exempt the village from the procurement codes. We did have a gentleman from the Air National Guard 183rd reach out. Apparently they have a civil engineering squadron that needs training. And so they could do the work kind of like the CCC camp, just provide labor.
Sure.
Do the work for free, provided they had the oversight with, the foreman and stuff. So I brought that up to Toby Trimmer, who's the deputy director of DNR, at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and he's like, give me his name and number. Maybe we can do an intergovernmental agreement that,
It's amazing what can happen once lines of communication start opening up.
Exactly.
Right? And then people start like, actually, we could use this and we could help each other here, and this could be beneficial to both parties. So Gina, great job.
Thank you.
Like you've put a lot of time and effort into this.
Yeah.
And really the whole state of Illinois, I think, owes you a debt of gratitude. I mean, I'm dead serious. It's such a cool place. And
it is. It's the crown jewel of Lincoln sites. It truly is.
And we embrace Abraham Lincoln. That is like our thing.
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was in my testimony. This is the land of Lincoln.
Yes.
We have it on our license plate.
This is what we like. This is what our identity is tied to, is Abraham Lincoln, one of the most iconic historical figures of all time.
Right.
And he's from here, and we have this place with so much, attachment and so many ties to Abraham Lincoln. And we're able to go walk around this village and see what things actually looked like and how they function and learn about life back then. And it's something that, like I said earlier, we all kind of take for granted because it's just been there our whole life. But man, if that went away, if we lost that,
it would be sad.
It would be so sad.
Because I'll tell you, I don't know if you know the story how he came there.
I don't.
So Lincoln... his dad was basically hiring him out and taking his money. Once Lincoln reached the age of 21, he was able to go out on his own. And they were living over probably between Riverton and Decatur somewhere.
Okay.
Lincoln and his stepbrother and his cousin ran into a gentleman by the name of Denton Offutt. Denton Offutt had Offutt's store at New Salem.
Okay.
He said, I'll hire you guys. If you build a flatboat for me, bring it to New Salem, pick up a load of cargo, take it to New Orleans for me. I'll pay you. And they're like, yeah, we're all over. We're 21 years old, 22 years old. Yeah, we'll do that. So they build a flatboat around Riverton somewhere. They bring it up the Sangamon River. So the grist mill grinds wheat into flour, So the grist mill doesn't have a big wheel, a paddle wheel. It has a tub wheel.
Okay.
So there's a wheel inside a tub that the water spins, that makes the drive shaft turn, that spins the stone that grinds the wood into flour.
Yeah.
So there was a pond, a reservoir, a mill bank right there that had a dam, and it kept the water there. They would open the chute, let the water in to spin that tub wheel. So he gets stuck. He gets his flatboat stuck on this dam, trying to get over.
Okay.
From loading his cargo on by the gristmill. Now, can't you just see all the guys sitting there going, now what's he going to do?
Yeah.
How's he going to get this out of here, out of this mess? Because he's got hogs on there. He's got barrels of flour, whatever he's taken to New Orleans. So Lincoln, being the ingenuity, that he had, he runs up the hill and he borrows an auger from the cooper shop. Goes back down, he drills a hole, gets the cargo off, he drains the water out, they lift it up, plugs the hole with a piece of wood, puts the cargo back on, and they take off. Go to New Orleans. And Denton Offutt was so impressed. When he came back, he said, I want you to work for me in my store.
Really?
That is how Lincoln came to be at New Salem.
That's a fascinating story. So is that story, is that somewhere there, like there at New Salem? Is that like written down somewhere?
There are several
is that
books.
Okay.
Benjamin Thomas is probably one of the best known biographers of Lincoln. Thomas Reap is another one. And Thomas Reap actually talks a lot about my Ferguson family members out there. It's funny. They kind of like to drink and fight.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't much to do back then. You know.
So he comes back and he stays. And, I always say the very ordinary people at New Salem recognized something extraordinary in Lincoln.
Sure.
And they fostered that. They loaned him books. They gave him the opportunity to be postmaster so he could read everything that came through the post office. They elected him captain of their militia for the Black Hawk War.
Oh.
So he had military experience. Then they lobbied for him to be surveyor.
So they saw something in a young guy. And, when people, because everybody obviously familiar with Abraham Lincoln, but they see the hat, the beard, they see President Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. Don't think about the young guy.
What it took to get to that point.
What it took to get there.
Right. Yeah. And nobody gets there, on their own. Everybody has to have, some help from the community, from the village and so those stories are there.
Yeah. He was only there 6 or 7 years, and he left a self-taught attorney. He was practicing some law while he was at New Salem.
Wow.
Witnessing transfers of deed for people.
And you brought some, and because now we're almost out of time, because you and I are both talkers, so we could be here all day.
We could be here all day.
So that's try to what is this?
This is a transfer of deed. My fourth great uncle John Ferguson purchased the ferry, the New Salem ferry, and this says, this is to certify that I have sold all of my right and title to the New Salem ferry to John Ferguson this 10th of October 1831. His mark, James Richardson, was the seller, and it is witnessed by A. Lincoln. And this is actually in the Lincoln papers down at the museum.
Wow. So that's so cool.
I think that's very cool. And his brother Alexander then was the shoe cobbler. So
that's so neat. So what can people do, if anything, to help?
I think at this point, just supporting New Salem, just going out there, making an effort to, just stay in touch with what's happening out there. I know I've had some people here who signed witness slips when I testified, and things like that. So I think maybe, if you see Senator McClure and Representative Rosenthal, thank them, because that's in their district.
Sure.
So they've done a lot.
Good. Oh, and thank you to them for that. If are there representatives that if somebody listening, has an interest, can they reach out and say, hey, this is important to me, please?
Absolutely, yeah. Senator Doris Turner has been very supportive as well. And thank Kelly Stotler. Kelly Stotler's mom, I don't know if everybody knows, Kelly Stotler's mom portrays Mary Todd Lincoln.
Really?
And I reached out to Kelly and I said, would your mom help me with this? We had a press conference in the basement of the Capitol, and Abe and Mary were there.
Oh, perfect.
And it was so cool because we walked around the Capitol, and every place we went, everybody wanted a selfie with him because
Well, yeah.
there were people from the Congo, people from Mexico, people from India. They all knew who Abraham Lincoln was.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. He's one of the most iconic just figures in the history of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how,
Yeah.
that's a very short list.
Yeah.
You know, so the fact that he had so much to do with, like, right here where we are.
Right here.
That's every reason to. So, like, before we, we're on the tail end here. So before we wrap up, I want to tie this back into real estate.
Okay.
Because we are a couple of realtors.
Yeah.
You have, as far as you jumped right into a leadership role.
Yeah.
And you have done an awesome job. Mm-hmm. And so I'm super glad to have learned more about it because social media, I see you like put stuff out there. So I knew you were involved. I didn't know the links you've gone to and everything you've put into it. So I think that is awesome and fascinating.
Thank you.
So on top of that, which takes time and effort.
That's why I did it in the winter.
You're still smart. You're still full-time realtor.
Yeah.
And you're a busy one. You do a lot there too. So I know you said you're on the forms committee.
Yeah.
Is that something, I mean, are you try to jump into those leadership roles as far as real estate goes too?
Well, I haven't ever chaired anything. I don't have that energy. I'm getting old, Eric. I'm getting old.
The only way to prevent getting old is to keep doing things.
I know. And I'm passionate, and I know what I'm passionate about. My daughter's diabetes. I was passionate about that, because that hit home. And so I was very involved in that. In fact, a few years ago, I kind of came out of retirement and went and lobbied for insulin pricing, caps on insulin pricing because people were dying.
Yeah.
New Salem is near and dear to my heart because of my family ties out there. And it's just wrong. It was just wrong.
Yeah.
And I have that scales of justice, when I see something is wrong, it's like, just do your job. This is wrong. So, and I think as realtors, giving back to our community is huge. It's very important. This is a huge deal for Petersburg. It's for their economy, aesthetics, tourism, and a lot of the people out there are descendants, just like myself.
Sure. Yeah.
And, once you read stuff like this, because I'm really into my genealogy, I'm kind of a nerd.
That stuff's fascinating, though.
It is. And these people, the names aren't just on a page anymore. People come to life and they have personalities.
Yeah.
They like to drink and fight and, and they pushed a ferry across the Sangamon River how many times a day, So you kind of get to know them a little bit. And so it's really cool.
So passionate about that, obviously.
Yeah.
Passionate about this industry too.
Yeah. And just
and reason I was kind of bringing that up because lately, so a few weeks ago I had Diane Tinsley on.
Mm-hmm. I went to college with Diane.
And she's awesome. It was a great episode. She did a phenomenal job. I had no idea that she was the current president of our association.
Oh.
It didn't even come up. We did the full hour, didn't even come up.
Yeah.
And I felt like an idiot when Kim Elliott called me, and because Kim's taking over, right? She's going to be right. I didn't, and Kim told me, she's like, "Well, Diane's current president," and I was like, "You're kidding me." I no idea, and so there's going to be there's a lunch too. Kim wants me to get involved somehow, and she's like, "Why haven't you ever?" You're doing this podcast and you're bringing these people together and you're talking and you're opening it. Why haven't you got involved like with the association and some sort of, I don't know what I would do. I'm in my 12th year and I just recently started actually like socializing with realtors. My kids are old now. So I have like more time to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I understand that.
But man, I can tell you, I am like hyper passionate about this industry. Like, I love this.
Government affairs, buddy. That's where
Yeah.
everything happens, I think.
Yeah. And
I mean, I'm not on government affairs anymore. I used to be, but I was down at lobby day because that's where you're going to make the biggest changes, I think,
Yeah.
in this industry.
well, and so I don't know what I would do. She's like, just, let's have lunch. So there's a lunch coming up Tuesday with the few people just to go over some stuff. So I was like, I'll go. I don't know what, but I'm not opposed to getting involved because this is something I care very deeply about. And then at Coffee and Questions today, Mike Busher was up there talking about how, he learned from, the John B's and the people, and now he's like, we need some of the, the younger people, not a spring chicken anymore, but, to step up and, who's going to lead us,
Right.
Into the next stage and make sure that it looks good for the people coming in behind us and stuff like that. And so it's got my brain going of like, okay, what can I do to help this industry? How can I give back a little bit? Because this has made just huge changes in my life. When I decided to become a realtor and I got licensed and I came here to the real estate group, life changed forever in a good way. So I'm very appreciative. So how do I give back and try to make sure that this industry can, provide what it did for me to the people coming in behind me? Yep. So, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with that. It's just, I'm trying to figure out ways to get involved and to give back a little bit too. And you seem to be very good at that kind of stuff when you're passionate about something. And I just don't know how to, where to channel that energy, I guess. So,
well, just jump in. Just, get on a committee and get involved and see where it takes you, because you might find something you're really passionate about.
Okay, maybe I will.
We're not 8 to 5 people who clock in and clock out.
No.
We're very different personalities. I think typically the realtors are.
Yeah.
They like to. They're movers and shakers. They really, honestly, they like to make change. And if that means you might ruffle a few feathers, you might ruffle a few feathers.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with that.
I mean, and when you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
And people don't like having that pointed out that, hey, you guys, you dropped the ball here. I will say DNR has some very new people in place at a very high level right now who've inherited a mess. This was not their fault.
Oh, I'm sure.
And they've got some great people. They've got a new guy out at the site who's awesome. He's trying all kinds of new stuff to get volunteers back. And they have a new historic sites director, the executive director, who's over all 56 sites. So I do have to say, I'm grateful that they have new people in place.
Yeah, I mean, can't do it. You can do a lot, but you can't do it all on your own.
No.
So you have to have other people also along with your cause trying to make some changes.
Absolutely. So. But yeah, jump in. I'm sure people will be reaching out to you now saying, get on this committee, get on.
Yeah, and I only have the time that I have,
right.
and I only have the knowledge that I have, but I love this, and so I want to make sure that that we can.
Well, and the timing's right. They put out the email the other day to sign up for committees.
I should start reading emails.
You probably should.
All right, Gina, we've got to wrap this up.
Awesome.
I've got some appointments this afternoon to get to. I can't tell you how thankful I am that you called me and wanted to come on here, and that you shared this story with us and everything you've been doing, and just for all your efforts there. I mean, as a kid who grew up here and has been going and checking out New Salem my whole life and just enjoying it every time.
Yeah.
Thank you for trying to keep that alive.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Gina Wolter, everybody. Thanks for listening and tuning in and following and liking and subscribing. And we'll get you back on for a roundtable with some other agents if
That'd
you
be
want
fun.
to. All right.
Thank you.